The sun beating down on the rocky cliffs of Saipan as a group of American Marines crept forward, scanning for enemy movement. A day before, they suffered a horrific Banzai attack and were expecting more from the Japanese at any moment. But what they saw next stopped them cold. At the edge of the cliffs stood a single Marine, alone and calm, surrounded by hundreds of Japanese troops, many still carrying weapons. It looked like a death trap. However, there was something strange in this picture. The Marine wasn't captured. He was giving orders and the Japanese were listening to him. One by one, they formed into lines, with more of them following suit from the caves below. The single Marine was Private Guy Gabaldon, a young man with a sharp mind, fluent Japanese, and the nerve to walk alone into enemy territory and come out alive. Guy Gabaldon was born in Los Angeles on March 22, 1926. He was the third of 7 children in a Mexican-American family. His father worked at many jobs to support them, but money was always tight. They lived in East LA, one of the poorest areas of the city. At age 10, Gabaldon began shining shoes and running errands to help the family. By 12, he joined a local group called the Mo Gang, despite his family's warnings. The gang was not dangerous, mostly young kids learning to survive the harshness of the LA ghetto. During this time, Gabaldon met Lane Nakano, a Japanese-American boy who became one of his closest friends. Gabaldon eventually moved in with the Nakano family, who welcomed him like one of their own. Living with them, Gabaldon learned Japanese and came to understand their culture well. Unfortunately, when World War II started, everything changed. The Nakano family was sent to an internment camp in Wyoming, even though they had done nothing wrong. Gabaldon, now on his own again, moved to Alaska in 1942 to work in a fish cannery. A year later, on his 17th birthday, he joined the Marine Corps. He trained at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. Later, he finished language training at the Japanese Language School at Camp Elliott. His ability to speak Japanese led to his role as a scout and observer in the 2nd Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division. His unique background would soon play an important part in the war. In June 1944, Gabaldon's unit became part of the 125,000-man invasion force that landed on the island of Saipan, part of the Mariana Islands. Having been under Japanese rule since the First World War, the island was home to a large Japanese civilian population and thousands of troops. Located about 1,500 miles from Japan, Saipan held great strategic importance for future operations in the Pacific. Capturing the island would place American bombers within striking distance of the Japanese home islands, especially with the introduction of the new B-29 superfortress. The problem was that by 1944, the Japanese had turned Saipan into a fortress. It housed nearly 32,000 Japanese troops, all prepared to fight to the death. In 1941, the Japanese army issued the Senjinkun, a field code that explicitly forbade retreat or surrender. Rooted in the spirit of Bushido, the traditional samurai code of ethics emphasizing loyalty, courage, and honor, soldiers were instructed to choose death over the shame of capture. That same propaganda was spread among the island's civilian population. The Japanese authorities portrayed American soldiers as monsters who would kill, rape, and torture anyone they captured. The Japanese went as far as to instruct the people to commit suicide rather than face capture. That instruction applied to everyone, including children. On June 15, 1944, thousands of Marines from the 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions landed on the beach of Saipan. From the moment they set foot on the island, they were thrust into brutal combat to secure the beachhead. The Marines quickly learned, through hard and bloody experience, what kind of enemy they were up against. Yet Private Guy Gabaldon was not among those who were impressed by the Japanese zealous resistance. In fact, he believed he alone could overcome it, and remarkably, he did. The first night of the invasion, Gabaldon left his post and wandered into enemy territory. A couple of hours later, he returned taking 2 prisoners along. Hardly anyone could believe what he had done. The Japanese were tough to kill, let alone capture. However, Gabaldon's superiors were not impressed. His commanding officer reprimanded him and warned him that if he left his post again, he would be court-martialed. Despite the warnings, Gabaldon was determined to keep up with his bold ventures. One morning, he came back from behind enemy lines with 50 prisoners, both soldiers and civilians. This time, his superiors had no choice but to recognize his success. In fact, they encouraged him to keep bringing in more prisoners. Gabaldon was now a mission of his own. He always worked alone, sneaking through the bushes at night until he reached an enemy bunker, cave, or hideout. Once he located the enemy, he would address the guards in fluent Japanese, telling them they were surrounded. He lied that he had a group of Marines with him and that they were ready to kill everyone in the hideout if they refused to surrender. However, he also promised that they would be treated with dignity and that all of them would return to their homes after the war was over. Surprisingly, the plan worked. Gabaldon returned from his night missions with dozens of captives each time. Because of his remarkable ability to persuade the enemy to lay down their weapons and follow him into captivity, the soldiers nicknamed Gabaldon the Pied Piper of Saipan. One day, however, Gabaldon thought his luck had finally run out. It was July 8, 1944. Just a date earlier, the Japanese defenders had launched a massive suicide attack. Approximately 4,300 Japanese soldiers, including wounded personnel and armed civilians, assembled near Makunsha village. Many were ill-equipped, wielding makeshift weapons such as bayonets attached to sticks or poles. They launched the assault against the U.S. Army's 105th Infantry Regiment. The sudden and ferocious attack caught the American forces off guard. The 105th Infantry Regiment suffered more than 900 casualties. On the other side, virtually all of the 4,300 attackers were killed. On the morning of July 8th, Guy Gabaldon snuck toward the top of the Banzai cliffs, the notorious spot from which soldiers and civilians alike were committing mass suicides by jumping into the abyss. He discovered 2 Japanese guards near a cave entrance and managed to capture them with his carbine. Suspecting that more people were hiding inside, Gabaldon began trying to persuade them to surrender. He spoke to them for a long time, trying to make them understand that continuing to fight would lead to certain death. He warned them about the American warships offshore ready to attack. He understood that their code viewed surrender as shameful, but also pointed out that leading civilians to death went against Bushido. The hardest part, however, was convincing them that they wouldn't be tortured or killed if they surrendered. Eventually, Gabaldon persuaded one prisoner to go back into the cave and try to persuade others to surrender. After a couple of minutes, the prisoner returned with 12 armed soldiers. Gabaldon stood still. Their weapons weren't pointed at him, but he knew one wrong move could mean death. He kept calm and acted as if he were in control. He offered cigarettes, spoke in Japanese, and delivered a message. He told them that General Smith, the American shogun of the Marianas operation, respected their bravery and promised fair treatment. He pointed to the American warships and urged them to stop the bloodshed. The truth was, he never even spoke to General Ralph Smith. The officer in charge, a first lieutenant, accepted a cigarette, which was a sign of hope. He looked out at the ships, knowing that resisting would be suicide. Finally, he said, "So be it. I become your prisoner." Gabaldon could hardly believe it. The officer left 4 men with him and went to speak with the rest of the group. Gabaldon waited, unsure if it was a trick, but less than an hour later, the officer returned with over 50 more men. The officer explained that many more people were still below, including civilians, many of them wounded. He asked that they be given water and medicine. Gabaldon showed him what little he had promised and more once everyone came up. Then, slowly, more people started appearing along the trail. Gabaldon couldn't believe how many they were. He began separating civilians from soldiers and helping the wounded. However, the situation grew tense. While most Japanese were willing to surrender, a few younger men still wanted to fight. Everyone was hungry, thirsty, and tired. If help didn't arrive soon, things could go out of control. Fortunately, it was then that the group of Marines appeared in the distance. One of the prisoners waved a white shirt on a stick. The Marines saw it and came down in a jeep, while others ran toward them. Gabaldon told them to take the seriously wounded to sickbay and bring more help quickly. He was doing everything he could to help keep order. Word of what he did spread quickly, and soon hundreds of Marines arrived on the scene. They counted no fewer than 800 Japanese prisoners, all of them captured by one man, Private Guy Gabaldon. Although luck didn't turn its back on Gabaldon that day, it eventually did. After Saipan, Gabaldon moved with the rest of his unit to Tinian, where he continued capturing Japanese soldiers and civilians. Later, Gabaldon returned to Saipan, where one day he walked into an ambush and was seriously wounded by machine gun fire. His extraordinary warpath had come to an end. During his time on Saipan and Tinian, Guy Gabaldon persuaded more than 1,500 enemy soldiers and civilians to surrender. It was truly a remarkable achievement, for which his commanding officer recommended him for the Medal of Honor. Despite the recommendation, Gabaldon was instead awarded the Silver Star. Upon returning to the States, he was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps. In 1960, the Corps elevated his Silver Star Medal to the Navy Cross. The campaign to award Gabaldon the Medal of Honor remained, though he never received it, not even by the time of his death in 2006 at the age of 83. Those who served on Saipan will never forget the heroism of Guy Gabaldon, whose actions are considered among the bravest humanitarian efforts of World War II. Thank you for watching this episode. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the Militology channel. Stay tuned.